Hey there, welcome to episode 133 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at 9:34 a.m. Pacific time here in Las Vegas on this Friday, September 12, 2025, 9:34 in the morning. We publish these episodes for Cafe Genius Impresarios on Fridays, so good timing. Not always at the same time, but we're getting there. Episode 133 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. The title and topic of today, The Problem. If you are not familiar with the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, or maybe you don't even know what Cafe Genius is, hey, you're in the right place, let me tell you. Cafe Genius is a combination of two terms, forms of homage, if you like. Cafe with two F's is a reference to Cafe Centro, a very cool, kind of simple, kind of quaint, but very cool coffee shop in the San Francisco Bay Area, in San Francisco itself. It sadly, was located in South Park, very near the then AT&T. In fact, it was probably around for Pac-Bell, but AT&T ballpark, now the Oracle ballpark. There was an actual park, South Park, picnic tables and so on. It was a very cool spot. Their tagline was "Where startups start." Famously, or for better or worse, if you like, Jack Dorsey was working on Twitter during its formative times at the Cafe Centro there, etc. So Cafe with two F's, Cafe Centro, a fine establishment. I had been there several times, but unfortunately no longer with us. Did not make it all the way out of the pandemic. And then Genius, a reference to the Genius lunches, which used to take place in the downtown Vegas area, related to the downtown project and the various entrepreneurs and project adjacent folks like myself getting together now and then for ad hoc meals and discussion. We could just find out what was going on, who was doing what, what's up, what's down, etc. A little gossip. They were quite effective, sort of self-contained network gatherings. An attempt to bring them back nowadays has been something of a steep uphill climb. People don't really get. I think they're too in tune now with the checkbox event. Wait, so I have to actually do something? I have to show up for lunch? Is lunch going to be provided to me for free? Will I be told where to sit and when with a full schedule of events planned? No, you just have to go and talk to other people and then get back to working on your entrepreneurial endeavors. So that's Cafe Genius in a nutshell. Cafe Centro and Genius Lunches, two great tastes. Cafe Genius formed in January of 2022 around the first little undertaking, which was the pitch workout room, an opportunity for those just getting started, aspirational or maybe nascent entrepreneurs who could get up in open mic fashion and present their ideas to a room, not necessarily filled, but 10, 25, 30, 35, who knows how many people would show up each month, and provide constructive feedback. The one rule, don't be mean. No slide deck, no problem. Get up and start talking. That's how the journey begins. So the pitch workout room was where Cafe Genius got its start. Today, among other things, the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, ideally it would have the impresarios as guests. These are people making it happen. But more often it is about impresarios and the ecosystem in which we find ourselves, whether it can be made better, whatever better really means. The Genius Roundtable was about defining what that means, for example. So here we are, episode 133. Let's get started so we can get finished. Hopefully, wherever you have found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a one-sentence summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for the episode. Note two things. Hopefully you're finding this in more places, which I'll mention in a moment. And two, hopefully you are interested in talking more about this and considering being a guest. Think about it. So let's get started so we can get finished on this lovely Friday morning, or whenever you're listening. Consider this another in an intermittent series on how a vibrant entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem might emerge from one that might be languishing. I always sound pessimistic, but My answer to that, if you are thinking that yourself, if I was pessimistic, I would already be gone. I would be elsewhere. Chaos is opportunity, as I'm wont to say. In fact, I think I've done at least one episode on that very notion. Plenty of opportunity in the greater Vegas area. The links for today's episode, change these a little bit. The host prefix may be, I could remove that. It's sort of implied, but the profile page linking everything. It used to be called Buy Dan a Coffee, but you don't have to buy me anything. You don't have to spend any money, but it's still at buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. There you will find the free form profile page. And I've had this page for years, so it remains. The freeform profile page does have links to all of my audio programs, including our nonprofit, the Innovate for Vegas, Let's Innovate for Vegas, for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. So links to that, links to the YouTube channels associated with each thing. There is youtube.com/@CafeGenius, where you will so far find the automated RSS feed captures of the podcast episodes. Then they're converted to single frame video, so you can listen to these programs on YouTube. There's also the cafegenius.org website, which will become more interesting with time. Right now it's sort of a placeholder, but there are links to the where you might find the audio programs and so on. In addition, the host, that's me, Buy Me an Update program, which is published first at buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts, but it too has a YouTube channel. Actually, it's available at Dan Hugo YouTube channel, because it's not like a formal show. Buy Me an Update, published every Monday mornings usually. A quick rundown on the week previous as far as audio programming topics, and any news and announcements upcoming. It's right there in the name, Buy Me an Update. So it used to be published exclusively on buymeacoffee.com, but now it is also soon after, like I think an hour later, it gets pushed to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. There's an RSS feed, and then there's a YouTube podcast that is posted automatically on the youtube.com/@DanHugo channel, DANHUGO, just like it sounds. And the Coffee Solo audio program. This one might fade away. It might fall off the weekly links for the various programs. It is a show. It's a standalone show, but it has no particular topic focus. It has no schedule. It's just me, just like the solo implies in the name. Coffee Solo used to be published exclusively at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/danhugo/posts. But guess what? Also available shortly after via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, RSS feed, pushed to YouTube, available on the Dan Hugo channel on YouTube, youtube.com/@DanHugo. Clear as mud. The Cafe Genius homepage, as I mentioned, cafegenius.org. Right now it's a placeholder. I was intending for the longest time to have a primary point of publication, a brand, not a vanity website, but a brand website. So there's cafegenius.org, there's quagglingsand.com, there's ffstalk.com, and there is, well, innovateforvegas.org already existed, so that's fine. But and then danhugo.com, which I've had forever. I figured, well, I can publish my kind of, they're kind of unusual. They're not intended to be like completely legitimate standalone content shows. Coffee Solo and Buy Me an Update. But anyway, that's the overall, this being a focus on entrepreneurialism and innovation here in the greater Vegas area. I do want to point out that doing things like this is part of the fun. So I languished myself for too long. It was on the back burner. Now, websites aplenty. And again, available, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. On that profile page, links to everything, along with affiliate links for coffee beans and other things I actually use. You don't have to spend any money directly. You can if you want. Buymeacoffee.com. You can put some money in the proverbial tip jar if you like, but you are not obligated to do so. And if you click on any of the affiliate links, if there's something you want to purchase, it doesn't cost you more money. So there you go. Make coffee happening. That's how we do what we do here. The magic of coffee. Let's be honest, caffeine. So all that said, let's get started. So we get on with our lovely day and weekend, or whenever you're listening to this. So the ecosystem, this is something of a catch-up or refresher. I only talk about this every week, I think. So if this is your first time, if you have not heard any of these previously, here's the quick rundown. The term ecosystem is often used to denote a so-called community of people with similar goals. It could be a gaming ecosystem. It could be a entertainment ecosystem. It could be an artisan ecosystem, the arts district, for example, along with the resources they will likely need to achieve these goals. So the flora and the fauna. There is a biological analog, of course, with enough overlap so that they can be compared and considered similar. You could say the flora and the fauna that make up a biological ecosystem, the plants and the animals interacting together, are similar to people in an ecosystem interacting with themselves and with other parts of the ecosystem that are not people. So there's enough similarity that it's a workable analog. Over the course of these many episodes, 133 was it? Yeah, something like that, including today. There is an episode 0, so make of that what you will. I've established my 4 pillars of an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. These are not my absolutely original ideas, but the formulation of the ecosystem with the 4 pillars. There are some who will suggest there are 8, there could be 10, there could be 5. So I've kind of distilled it to 4, although right off the bat, there's they could easily be split up into 7. But let's continue with the 4 for the moment. Maybe I'll do an entire episode on 4 versus 7. So the pillars, according to me, are these: education and talent pool. People who can be founders, co-founders, employees, consultants, and more, either learning to do so or participating in a talent pool through mysterious means. We could call this expertise, perhaps. We could combine them to be expertise. The implication, though, is that education is a proactive element of the ecosystem. It's trying to develop a population of those who can participate more effectively, more completely. The talent pool includes people that come out of this educational infrastructure, but also might be people who enter the ecosystem from mysterious origins unknown. It could be people that just know how to do stuff. Maybe they didn't have to learn in a formal education setting. Maybe they just do it, whatever it is. It could be writing. It could be machine tooling. It could be anything, right? So education and talent pool, pretty essential. Infrastructure and regulation. These are elements provided or enabled by government entities at one or more levels. So it could be city governments, county, state, even federal in the case of the United States. So the federal government may participate in, for example, the BEAD program, which was monies to spend on building out internet connectivity infrastructure. So BEAD funding, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the BEAD stands for, but it was funding to enable more wireless, more cell towers, more running of fiber through cities and so on. And the city of Las Vegas has been participating with BEAD funding to build out fiber infrastructure. So more people hopefully will be accessing internet services. So infrastructure and regulation are things that the government does, provides, sometimes gets in the way of. And the federal government may be participating in different levels and different ways for the near term. We'll see. So who knows? Culture and community. This is the squishiest one. Community is arguably an overused and loaded term, so I don't like to use it too much. It means something specific, like people in a group, almost like an ecosystem, but usually smaller. But it's kind of grown to be, I'm a community builder. We have a community of people who don't really know each other. So telling people they're in a community is very different from an actual community. A community is like a neighborhood or people with a common interest, hopefully advancing those interests. Anyway, essentially, this is the population attitude in general as it applies to risk, creativity, thinking outside the box, accepting the unknown as possibility, and so on. So culture and community, the people need to understand that Entrepreneurialism and innovation are not snapping of the fingers. They are not headlines posted on LinkedIn. They are actual work. There's some risk. There could be great reward and so on. If you want an example of culture and community, you can watch the sci-fi program Eureka from many years ago. I actually talked about this in a previous episode. That had culture and community and some drama, maybe a little bit of humor. This may seem like variation on talent pool, but they should instead be considered orthogonal essentials. Orthogonal, like perpendicular. And then finally, access to capital. This is the one everybody mentions first, usually, so I've mentioned it last. It is the energy that makes everything else go, perhaps, from bootstrapping with one's own capital to the first stages of unicorn. I'm going to need $1 billion in Series A, or round A, I guess, the angel round. Just $1 million. No, $1 billion. One of those. It is the aspect of Greater Vegas that had always been raised first as a concern in the past. Anyway, I don't. If you were to ask someone today what their greatest concern is it still access to capital? It was 2 years ago. There may be some hand waving, or there may be actual access to capital now. And by the way, something that was found in our travels from the Genius Roundtable days, there is capital. So the access to capital has the risk aversion component to it. So the capital that was available in the scenarios we were discussing here was hidden behind risk aversion. So it's not just a question of is there money, it's the access, the interest, and so on. By the way, a culture of innovation might help to ease that risk aversion. It might make people ponder more flexibly the possibilities. If there's more of it happening, if you're in a community of innovation, to use the C word again, but if there is innovation happening around, if our ecosystem is vibrant and vital, there may be a slightly less risk-averse population that could enter the fray. Anyway, we'll see. Optimism. I sometimes break the culture away as a specific element, innovation culture, which is still community, which is still a term I don't really like so much, but it also is the least tangible. That's why I kind of break it away. Capable talent, infrastructure, and capital, those are the other three pillars. So these can be quantified for the most part. You can measure the amount of capital available, the amount of capital in circulation, and the amount of investment in particular segments of a entrepreneurial ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. Infrastructure, you either have infrastructure or you do not. You have government spends, you have budget numbers you can look at, and a capable talent, you can actually look at how many people are available in particular professions or areas of expertise. You can look at the number of people employed, you can look at the number of people available, you can look at the number of jobs that require the difference, et cetera, right? So these are all things you can attach numbers to. While culture is not that certain, it's not a thing that you can measure. It's that I don't know what, the je ne sais quoi. It's more qualitative than quantitative. At the same time, a lack of innovation culture here in Greater Vegas is, if I am to be believed, the problem. Yeah, I know, it's the Broken Record Club. I've talked about this before, but in the context of just keep listening, I promise. The qualitative deficit. So what are we missing there? The innovation culture is not completely absent here in Vegas. Don't believe for a moment that I am claiming there is none. There are pockets of it here and there around the Greater Vegas area, and if we consider a broad and proper definition, there is actually quite a bit of innovation happening outside of the reflexive tech box. So often, entrepreneurialism here in Vegas is automatically associated with tech and tech startups. Startup NV is famously overly focused on investment, or they were last time I spoke to them, investment in tech in certain particular fields. So Startup NV is not really about any startup. It's about the startups that our investors are interested in. Okay, fine. As long as that's made clear to people. Innovation, similarly with the latest thing, AI nowadays, the metaverse last month, whatever the big thing is coming up that next month, that is where the innovation is to be found, right? No, let us stop believing that as the default. Innovation takes many forms here in Vegas. Fun fact, which I've mentioned before, the Code for Vegas Foundation, when we initially rebooted Code for Vegas, that word code was kind of throwing people off. Innovation is not code. Code can be innovation. Innovation does not require code or tech. There's probably some in there nowadays, in the modern times, but innovation takes many forms, many different types of skills, many different types of people, solving many different types of problems. It would be a strategic mistake to believe that innovation is the pursuit of artificial intelligence applications, right? It's bigger than that. My assertion that reflex can easily quench the evolution of an innovation culture if there is some belief that it is supposed to be a particular thing, as I've just intimated. If not tech, then what form might innovation take? Well, maybe food, beverages, water conservation, sustainability in general, energy efficiency, water efficient farming, moisture recovery from air, which is actually happening in recent headlines, UNLV. And that's also a thing that's already been a thing. Star Wars 1977, moisture farming. Anyway, hospitality, gaming, transportation, autonomous vehicles, airborne and on our streets, multicultural interfaces for visitors. Not everyone speaks English or maybe Spanish. I believe Tagalog is number 3, but we have something approaching 40 million people visiting here every year. They don't all speak one of those 2 or 3 languages. Manufacturing, healthcare, biotech, fintech, general entertainment, sports, and exercise. And that is only the beginning. These are happening if you believe the LVGEA, that's the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance website, Zero Labs, and Blackfire, which emphasize hospitality and gaming innovation. The Water District, which focuses heavily on making the most of the water we have access to and recovering as much as possible, capturing rainfall and snow melt and so on. UNLV and its focus on various things, including trademarking the fun economy and other similar references. So there's a ton, you have to look for it, but there's a ton of stuff going on here at earth-changing scale. Maybe not yet, but to believe that the future must be the development of artificial intelligence, mobile applications or something, if it's just that one thing, one has missed the forest for the tree. Ask yourself, when someone asks you about innovation in the greater Vegas area, do you shrug? Are you aware of any of these that I just mentioned? And there are almost certainly more. These were literally off the top of my head. I've already looked for some of these in the past, but these are just the things I have now come to know. Do you suppose there must be some in the gaming industry or innovation in the gaming industry, or do you try to remember what you may have come across the last time you were at something like Tech Alley or the Think Up or Goof Up or whatever it is? If there was a more substantial innovation culture resting on the ground and rising into the air of our oasis in the desert, that certain something would be far more apparent, appearing in conversation, local media and local press, and perhaps on the world stage. That Vegas, not only is it known for its fun economy, but there's a lot of biotech research that's kind of sprung up. Or, hey, it's an innovation destination. It's a place that has the tools you would need to bring your company located in different locations around the world together for a couple of weeks to take part in innovation sprints and other collaboration. I know it's crazy, right? Our culture is fun economy. Ask anyone around the world, and this is the first guess. And I've referred to that as well. When I was traveling substantially, like 80% or more of my time spent traveling on the road for Intel Corporation in the Maker Innovator Group. See, it's right there in the name, Innovator. I got you. When I would, if people would ask, oh, you're from America, where from? Or if I would say, oh, I live in Vegas, right away, there was they recognized that they know that city, right? It's New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, right? It's a city that people are familiar with, even though I think there's something like 13 cities of Las Vegas around the world, mostly in our hemisphere. So, oh, yes. Do you spend all of your time gambling? Yes, of course. Of course. That's why I'm here. I'm traveling on my winnings. No, that was the belief, though. So everybody is aware of that brand. So not necessarily getting away from that, but adding to it is something that, first of all, takes awareness here at home that these things are actually happening. And you don't do that by hiding them behind a continuous stream of unrelated press that doesn't recognize these things. I've talked about this before. So First Friday, let's take a little intermezzo here and talk about First Friday. Why? Well, let us look at the monthly event, which has been taking place for over a decade. And I don't know how much longer than a decade, but it's been going on since I moved here 12 years ago. So more than a decade, maybe much longer, with a notion that is not local. So the First Friday is actually an event that happens in other places, other localities. There was a First Friday in San Jose when I used to live in the Bay Area. And it's usually on Fridays. And it's quite often at the beginning of the month, each month, which promotes an entire district here in Vegas, probably promotes music and entertainment in general. The San Jose event was, first of all, it was sprawling. It was all over downtown San Jose, and it kind of looped in local businesses and food trucks, of course, and booths and purveyors of creativity and merchandise and so on. So it promotes here in Vegas an entire district, the arts district, and the artisans, the artists and businesses within it. Technically, the event in the arts district in downtown Las Vegas is the First Friday Art Walk, though that specific branding is not used consistently. It is often referred to, even by the First Friday Foundation, as First Friday. All of this falls under the purview of that nonprofit entity called the First Friday Foundation. Now, and they do have a website, First Friday Foundation LV, or FFFLV.org. Now, the triple F happens to leverage the recurring day and the massive momentum behind this long-running event, requiring almost zero additional advertising or marketing, and in general. In fact, one of the main issues with this comes up on occasion. There will be excessive wind warnings. And if you've ever been to an event with tent vendors, you know those tents are really light, and a good wind can pick them up and blow them away. And it can cause other problems, sand and other dirt things, dust, blowing, swirling around, getting in people's eyes, causing problems, maybe causing traffic problems and so on. So if there is an excessive wind warning, they will sometimes call an audible and cancel the event. Well, how do you reach out to so many people? And I don't know if attendance is still somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000. I think it used to be closer to 15,000 in the pre-pandemic era. The event has a smaller footprint now, arguably. But how do you contact people when there's so much momentum behind the fact that it is the First Friday? I don't even need to look at the website. I don't need to check the news. I'm going to First Friday. Yeah, that's one of the problems. So when you rely completely on that, people stop checking. So there's very little additional advertising or marketing in general, as I said. So in general, if it is something of a known quantity by most people, and while they do have or otherwise engage with sponsoring entities, for example, and they book entertainment, usually a band or two, and that is published on their website, and they maintain a roster of participating artisans and small businesses, but they don't really publish that, some of which pay a fee to participate in the event, many actually. And I think those fees have gone up, but I don't know them specifically, so I'm not gonna go there. Consider this, especially if you visit ffflv.org, their website. They mention their sponsors and in particular booking participating in the event, the upcoming event. Or if you visit their website today, as I'm recording this on September 12th, you will see the previous event. So the event from September 5. So they only update their website maybe the week before. So otherwise they leave the previous month in place. So that's from last week relative to today. And they mention local artists and small businesses generally without actually calling any of them out, and food trucks. So a small amount of background. I've been involved with food trucks in various ways for many years since I was in Silicon Valley. We formed an owners association there. We tried to form an owners association here because if you are a believer in small business, you know that small business needs to have not a small voice, but a larger aggregate voice to make their concerns known, to be heard. So I encouraged loudly, and I put my efforts where my encouragement was, to have a business league that looks out first for the interests of its membership, so mobile vendors. Right? So I had had a conversation with the First Friday Foundation, and this has been the case for years in different places, different ways. There's always and food trucks. Come by to our event, and there's food trucks. So what ends up happening is the food truck has a following, and I'm focusing on the food trucks. There are food tent vendors, so they don't actually have a mobile kitchen on wheels, but they bring mobile or portable kitchen equipment, and they're able to function with a tent according to different health department rules and so on. But anyway, so generally speaking, a business will bring their resources to an event and they have a certain following. So they market their presence at that event. Hey, we're going to be at First Friday this month. So they reach out. So they are paying to participate in the First Friday event and they do the marketing. It's such a deal. So, and food trucks. And I had a conversation with the people at First Friday when we had our owners association. And I said, if we could make it easy for you to promote the individual vendors, you already have a list of the vendors. What if each vendor had a web presence that wasn't Instagram? You could actually point to a resource that had their menu, that had their contact information and so on, so that at least they're getting something. We're talking a very minimal effort. All you have to do is say, here's a list of food trucks. And I even told them, I'll even build the list for you, because the vendors that were going to be participating could simply put that on their calendar and we would generate a calendar like, here are the events for the month. Here's First Friday and here's all the vendors that will be there and so on and so on. So very little interest in that. Kind of a, yeah, you go ahead and do that. To this day, many years later, and food trucks. And it's not only First Friday Foundation. I have to make that clear, but that's a high profile example that's been extremely consistent in their sort of a laissez-faire attitude towards helping the businesses that help them stay in business. Anyway, okay, enough about that. Let me get off my food truck soapbox. Is it a food truck? Is it a food truck shaped soapbox? I don't know. But the reason I brought that up, our culture here in the Greater Vegas area needs some rethinking. Maybe it doesn't, but it probably does if we intend to do something interesting. Given my own efforts and experience with food trucks and the First Friday Foundation, which I just described, I can make a statement about that specifically, but I'm also seeing more generally, but more anecdotally. I can describe my observations and things that I have heard from others, but I don't really have the same level of interaction that I had with the First Friday Foundation and the mobile vendors of Vegas. So without so much direct experience, so these are, take them for what they are. That said, I'm actually becoming more concerned in the last year or so. So certainly calendar 2025, calendar 2024, probably, maybe even post-pandemic. Maybe we can just group all that together because it's been an interesting, retransition back into some degree of normalcy. Mix in that desire for economic diversity coming from on high. So interesting times. The presumption that all of this great success, all the things that are alleged to be happening and going on, it's a foregone conclusion. It may diminish the tendency of people in this ecosystem as it is to actually endeavor to add to it in elevating ways. That is, they may be operating in it. They may find it works for me. It's good enough for me. And Vegas is going to blow up. It's already the next Silicon Valley and Hollywood 2.0. But that is not enough to make for a really viable and vibrant ecosystem. You are listening to what people are saying, and it's good for me. I don't really have to do much else. Hey, we're already all these other things. People are very excited about it. But the hype curve is real. I've talked about that too previously. I have seen time and time again the tendency to post information on LinkedIn and presume the people who want or need to find this information will find it. They're probably following me, or they're probably somebody will like or comment, and it will be seen. I don't have to worry about it. The amount of cross-promotional mention, whether driven by the original poster or by others, drops off precipitously off LinkedIn. So you kind of got to be on LinkedIn to figure out what's going on. I liken this to the FFF, the First Friday Foundation, because there is a similar attitude, which I believe appears to be pervasive here in the Greater Vegas area, that some minimal amount of effort is sufficient. Those who want to know will find it for themselves. At an interpersonal level, while I have stopped using LinkedIn as a personal blogging tool, we have a page for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. There's a Cafe Genius page, but I myself do not post there anymore. I don't post my little announcements and my LinkedIn formatted stories. the introductory sentence, high drama, one additional sentence to tease, and then the rest must require a click on the more. It's all a strategy. You're using the algorithm. But I do use it for network connections. I reach out to people, more so in the last 3 months, to people here in Vegas in the education and tech and innovation sectors. As I reach out and actually make more local Greater Vegas area connections, I am finding that the connection is where it ends. That's it. We're connected on LinkedIn. That's all we got to know. 80% of the time or more, an attempt to engage in any sort of conversation is met with a lack of response entirely, sometimes known as silence. Why did we connect? Why did you accept my invitation to connect if you're not going to be responsive or engage in any other way? Honestly, LinkedIn to me is garbage at this point, but it's what people use. So let's talk about Startup Week in the context of what I've just described with First Friday Foundation as a sort of benchmark that I'm more familiar with as compared to other similar scenarios in different parts of Vegas. So Startup Week. So let's look at this as this example. I believe this is the third iteration of this annual event. I did not attend the previous event, so I think it's the third, could be the fourth. It is not a full week, but rather 3 days. And then Tech Alley is sort of a given as a Saturday end cap. So it takes place on the 20th. The event is from the 17th to the 19th. That's close enough to a week, I guess. Maybe there's just not enough to fill a week. And we know nothing about it. Yes, the panelists, if you visit the website, there is a Startup Week Las Vegas website, which I will not promote because they don't either. So the panelists with specific gatherings on the agenda. So there's blocks of time and, the panelists are these 6 people or this one person. And there's a speaker page for each panelist or each speaker and so on. There is an Ignite event, which I believe is unsanctioned by the Ignite Talks organization, but it's hard to find out. It's hard to know. Nobody really answers emails anymore. And so it's driven by the GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Okay, but why are we seeing the and food trucks mentality? I don't know. I don't think they're having food trucks there, but and food trucks. In this case, it's and startups. When mentioning the actual startups and the entrepreneurs, not the panels, but the participating in the startup discovery crawl, for example, we don't know who it is. Could we have some idea what to expect? And we might have some idea of who we encountered or who we missed if we didn't encounter them after the fact, if we did go, or maybe if we didn't. Like, so who are the startups? Who are the startups that were in the discovery crawl? Who will I meet? Who may I have met? Who did I miss out on meeting? Who did I just not encounter? Oh, well, I didn't come across them when I was, that's too bad. Here's a link to their website, or here's how to contact them. Here's what they're doing. So there's more effort put into promoting the speakers and their panels than the actual startups during Las Vegas Startup Week. What we have here is come by and find out, which is actually a Vegas cultural trait. How do we know? Well, in the face of declining visitor numbers and the associated resort occupancy and general revenue numbers declining or in decline, a soft summer, as some will say, and these are not like 50%. These are 10 to 12% declines in some numbers. Other numbers are up. So doomsayers who are building their YouTube channels with doom content have been making a giant deal of this. My stance, which I have commented on already, was let's wait until after the summer and look back at the aggregates and see what the actual impact was. These are not empty streets and empty casinos and empty hotels. It's a decline in occupancy on the world stage. There's a lot going on. So not the end of the world, my take. But there's a new fabulous campaign. Where'd they get that from? The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, which is responsible for promoting outreach and engagement and measurement of those groups, the visitors and convention attendees. After the Only Vegas campaign, only in Vegas. So I think it was hashtag Only Vegas. Things you will only find in Vegas. So you got to come here, which is itself after the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, which again means you're just going to have to come to Vegas. That was a pretty famous campaign, and people often believe it's still going on. Hey, if it's free, why not? The general thinking, you are going to need to come here. You wouldn't get it otherwise. That's something to think about. Like, the startup scene in Vegas, Trust us, we have one. And if you want to find out more about it, you're going to have to come to Startup Week because we're not going to tell you anything else. You're going to have to come to First Friday and figure out which food trucks are here. Is your favorite one going to be here? Well, that's up to you to figure out. So we can simply assume that Greater Vegas is indeed the next Silicon Valley, that we are indeed a global innovation hub, and that anyone who wants to know more can stop by Startup Week and find out then what the so-called startup scene is composed of. Who is doing what? Where is going on here and what? No, what's going on here and where? The panelists will tell you all day the hows and the how muches, if that's a word I just invented. But it seems as though the people making this thing real, the people that are actually entrepreneurial and innovative, making our ecosystem what it is, or a part of what it is, there are parts of it that are not the people, as I've mentioned. These are the unnamed participants who are not getting the attention that they should be getting. And I've talked about this quite a bit, about the real Silicon Valley, the actual one that actually is still going today with all of its myriad of headaches and tech bros and economic problems and so on. Silicon Valley is what it is. I wouldn't want to be in the next Silicon Valley myself. I'm hoping to be in a better Vegas, but that's a different story from a different previous episode. But it seems as though the people that are making this thing real are unnamed participants in the Startup Discovery Crawl. We don't know who they are. We're just going to have to come by and find out. It's fabulous Las Vegas, right there on the sign. It's been saying it for decades. Put another way, the website for this event could easily promote the panelists and speakers, and it does. And somewhere down at the bottom, it says, and startups. All too familiar. I can hear a gardener blower thing. So I'm going to try to wrap this up before that gets here. So cultivating our innovation culture and enriching our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. These are not 3-day events once a year where these things take place, where everyone checks another box confirming that they are part of the so-called startup community. This is a frequent observable behavior, or it should be, needs to be, with the small number of checkbox events, what I've described as a problem is frequent and observable behavior with a small number of checkbox events, some monthly, some less frequent, and then annual events such as this Startup Week, Global Entrepreneur Week, and maybe one or two others. So sorry, I confused myself and maybe you a little bit there. The status quo right now is not enough. That is the problem. There is no single button to press to force culture and ecosystems to flourish. To paraphrase a related saying, it takes a village. This is one reason I advocate repeatedly for the introduction and encouragement of innovation mindset at early ages as part of an overall education scheme. Famously, the Greater Vegas education system was focused on training employees and not doing a wonderful job of that. Now's the chance. Guess where you can innovate? Did you guess education? Yep, you are correct. To place entrepreneurialism and innovation at front of mind for more of the developmental years during their path through our educational system. This doesn't help the older folks like me and you, of course. For that, the population, for we in that population, there needs to be a connection between proaction and observable, describable growth or return on some investment that each person makes, because we are a very self-centered culture. This means escaping the solipsistic tendencies and understanding that culture is not something we can measure specifically, more a factor that elevates other things which we could measure specifically. For myself, there is a ton of work to do. I do not believe Startup Week offers a strong value proposition for me. Your mileage may vary. I'm sure a large number of people will attend. It would be interesting to know how many. But as is so often the case, it's unlikely that that information will be made available. If I do take advantage of the fact that I have indeed registered for this free to attend event, okay, I had to pause there a little bit to try to get around that noise, which is still going. It's a free to attend event. I've registered. It will be, if I do attend, it will be for the Startup Discovery Crawl, which happens in the evening, 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 17th of September. And it's quite a ways away from where I am presently producing this content. So it'd be a bit of a journey, a bit of a trek to get down there. I would go for that. I wouldn't even go for the morning coffee meetup because guess what? I should be able to meet those people all the time. So the Startup Discovery Crawl is the one event during the entire 3 days that I believe would be worthwhile Why? Because that's how I could discover what the hell's going on in this place. There is very little in the way of promotion, recognition, and celebration otherwise. So to figure out what's happening on the ground in Greater Vegas, you kind of got to go to the thing, because so far, we do a lousy job doing this day to day, and we should be doing it. That's part of the culture. If you were in Silicon Valley, you would kind of know that you're in Silicon Valley, but you would also see and hear mentions of startups and big moves and technology and all sorts of things. Guess what you get in Vegas? You get the same level of awareness, but it's around the fun economy. It's around the residents. So-and-so signed up a contract. There's a new residence has been extended. Some local or some visitor won a big jackpot. There's been some number of crimes committed in some particular area. Pedestrian car collision, right? These things get normal attention. So we have the infrastructure in place to celebrate or recognize and celebrate bad things, or in the case of gambling winnings, that's bad for the casino, but it's good for the winner and good for the headlines. We could do better at recognizing and celebrating the entrepreneurs who are allegedly part of this global innovation hub. And now you should be able to hear some gardening going on, the dulcet tones of a back-mounted blower, probably gasoline powered. So that is where we're going to wrap up today's episode amidst the noise, the cacophony. We can do better. We need to cultivate a culture of innovation, and we need to start certainly at age 12, if not before. And we also need to start with the older folks like me and you. So let's get to work. Take care. Have a good weekend, or whenever you're listening to this. Excelsior.